Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today is gonna be a tutorial video. I don't usually do these, but I'm gonna show you guys how to take photos with either your iPhone, Google Pixel, Samsung, just any smartphone that you have with a decent camera, and how to upload them on Instagram and get the best quality out of your photos. So I'll take you kind of step by step on how to do it, starting from getting to that location, taking the photos, my thought process on how I plan shots and what features I use for the camera. And then in addition, I will also show you guys how I edit through Lightroom for those photos. So I'll take you guys with me. So I usually start off with more of the background stuff, and then I do more of the kind of close-up shots, portrait shots after. So all I'm going to be using is my Google Pixel 7 here. This is the 7 Pro, and let's see what shots we're going to get out of it. Just a couple of those 3/4 shots and a frontal shot, some rear shots. Now I'm going to do some more further back shots. So you want more of the background, you can also do a 0.5 here. It's not picking it up in the camera here, but one thing to take note here is that there's a big riverbed right here, so you can use that as a leading line to lead up to the car. It's just like little elements like this that makes the picture a lot better. Sometimes it's worth kind of risking it. Look how dirty my hand is from grabbing that fence, just to get a couple of good shots. So what I do is I set the phone into portrait mode here, and then just gonna get some close up so we can get that nice bokeh. Shot a bunch of photos right before sunset, and now that the sunset is actually happening, look how pretty it is. It's freaking insane. Oh my god. I swear some of these photos on the phone, just straight off the bat, look so much better than the ones that I take with the camera. Sometimes I don't even know why I try. Why do you even shoot RAW when you can just fucking shoot JPEG on this? We're gonna head back and I'll show you guys how I edit in Lightroom. It is so windy and it's getting really cold. So now I have the photos imported into my computer. The way I edit with Lightroom, I try to do it as efficiently as possible. So I kind of just scrub through the images real quick to see which ones I like the most, and then I rate them. So the ones that I don't really like, not mark it at all. So this shot that I got of the exhaust I really liked, so I will rate it a 3-star. This burn was really nice. Yeah, that one's okay. It's alright. This was gonna be the thumbnail, so let's save this one. Ooh, this one's pretty good too. I try to use the tripod as a framing method. One of these is okay. I kind of like the lower one better. Like this one. Some of these are so good. Looks alright. Like, I know the goal of this video was to show how you can shoot with a smartphone, but Usually when you shoot 0.5, you really can tell that it's a smartphone, just because there is not much. Personally, I don't like shooting super wide. I might edit this one just to see. The thing about shooting really wide, and if you're not really into landscape, is that it's hard to get a subject. Ooh, I kind of like this one. It's kind of hard to get a sense of subject and the message that you're kind of trying to portray. I think I scrubbed through them already. And then go down to filter rate it. So I have about 20-ish photos to edit. I really like this shot. I think this shot was really good. Go to develop, and I will always adjust the white balance first. And since this is a very warm scene, I think I'm gonna keep it a little bit more warm like that. That's okay. And the rest of it I'm not gonna touch yet. What I usually do is I do a drowning of all the saturation. So I take out all the saturation in the photo, everything. And then I edit based off the black and white. So you can really tell what the exposure and what the contrast, shadows, and highlights are doing. So I'm increasing exposure here, and you can see it's making the photos more bright. And then whenever you bump exposure, you do want to also bump contrast so it doesn't look too weird. Usually when you do exposure without contrast, it looks really weird. Specifically for this scene, I do want to draw down the highlights. That way we get more of the sunset. You can see the sky a little bit more. I'm seeing how that affects the cars, and affecting the car too much, so that's pretty good. Just want to drown out that, and then we can bump. I usually like to bump the shadows up a little bit. The whites and blacks, if you're on a MacBook, you hold the Alt or Option, and then you can see where the clipping areas are, and you want to make sure that that's all gone. Ooh, that part is really dark, but I think that's the best we can do. I just do minor adjustments there. For clarity, I like to make my photos a little bit more kind of dreamy, so I do bump down the clarity a little bit. Dehaze, I kind of just leave alone. I usually increase vibrance and leave saturation alone. And then next thing we do is I do the tone curve, but I use the point curve here. I usually bump the highlights here a little bit, and then a little bit of a bump on the midtones. You can see how that affects the ground. Actually, I might just drag it down a little bit so we get a little bit more contrast. And then you kind of want to make the shadows more black by dragging this down. Now that gets you a lot of contrast in the photo. And sometimes I would bump this up to kind of create more of a moodier kind of look. But in this case, because it's more of a sunset photo, I'm just going to leave that alone for now. And then we finally get down to the saturation, and we get to choose what colors we want and what we don't want. So right here, that red, if we bump it, you see that it's affecting that GR badge. So you kind of want that to flash a little bit. So I'm going to bump that up a little. And then let's see what the orange affects. The orange is for sure affecting a good amount of the photo here. So I'm going to bump that. Yellows too. I don't like having too much yellow. I feel like I used to like that yellow style, that amber style, but I've kind of grown away from it. So I'm going to just kind of let it drown a little bit. I do like the orange a little bit more though. And then the green, it's not affecting too much. A little bit of the grass right there. Not really our main focus, so we can leave that. And then aquas usually affect the windows right here. That's the big thing about cars, is that usually if you have windows, the aquas are reflected, so we don't really need that. It's also affecting the sky a little bit, but we're just gonna kind of drown that out because it's not too important. next step is gonna be the blues. Now, this car specifically gets a lot of blues reflected on it. Look what happens when I move the saturation here. That blue is just all over the car. So it took a lot of time to kind of adjust and learn how to shoot this car because it gets really blue, and you want to make that color as lifelike as possible, as true to life as possible. And it's supposed to be like a silver, kind of like this, with a little bit of hint of blue, but sometimes that reflection from the sky really clips it over and makes it look weird. But I think I like it like this so far. So this is the before and this is the after. I think we're looking pretty good now. A lot of the sky is gone though. Doesn't look like there's much color to it. Could probably be because of the yellow that was drowned out. So let me add a little bit more yellow, little bit more orange, and I think I kind of like that. And then to color grade, I do a very simple color grading. I usually just do, I'm not an expert at this, so I usually just do the shadows, I do a teal, a little bit of a teal, and then the mid tones I usually do a orange, and then the highlights I do also orange. And this makes very minor difference, but it does kind of bring out the contrast a little more in the photos because the orange and the teal are kind of complementary colors. So I like how it's looking right now. I'm gonna mask this right here. I usually mask it just enough to have the outlines of the car, and then I sharpen the photo. Usually about that much. And you can tell a drastic difference by sharpening, but you don't want to over sharpen because it brings in noise. And then usually when I crop for Instagram, I crop a 4:5. I think I should have done the cropping first. Shooting on a smartphone, it kind of already crops for you. I have this weird crazy layout here for Lightroom. Anything that is, I actually learned this from Pat K, and he uses this way of cropping where it's a bunch of squares within the rule of third. Anything that's in between the intersections of a square, it makes the image a lot more powerful and it draws the viewer's eye more closely to it. So I usually keep like the headlights right at that center right there, so you can see this part, and then you want to make the car kind of equidistant from one side to the other side. There you go. And then I am cropping a little higher here because obviously there is more going on top of the photo compared to what's below. And then the next thing I do is I use the AI functions to create mask of the car. Lightroom has made this super easy. Before I would have to paint over every single part of the car, which is super annoying. But now that Lightroom has all this technology and, you know, with AI and stuff and Photoshop, it makes it a lot easier. But what I usually do is I just bump the exposure a little bit to kind of make the car pop. I think that's okay. And like I mentioned earlier, whenever you bump exposure, you want to add a little bit of contrast back to it. Let's see how the highlights kind of affect it. Bring it down a little bit. And then the shadows. You want to kind of pay attention to some of the details within like the darkest spots, like usually around the grille, the tires, and maybe even parts of the interior, to see how it kind of pops. You don't want it to pop too much, so like this, it's like, oh yeah, you can definitely see the tires right there and that grille a little too much, so we're gonna dial it back, usually just a little bit like that, and that looks pretty good to me. And then, so what I do is I do a gradient usually to kind of draw attention to the car. So here we have the linear gradient, so I'm gonna subtract the subject, which is the car here. I usually decrease the exposure so it draws the attention away, increase the contrast a little bit, and increase clarity. There you go, like that. Now I do the linear doing this way. And I'm doing this because you can see that there is light hitting against the car. And I think we can use that. So the light seems like it's coming from this way, so why don't we create it this way, like this. Yeah, something like this. And then we increase that. That way that light comes through. Whenever you add light, you always want to add contrast. And then you kind of just pull it through right here. So that's before, and that's after, and that's looking really good. Another thing we can do here is we can create a radio gradient around the car, and then I do an inversion just like that, and then I kind of just darken it just a little bit like that. I like that. One last mask, I do a select sky, kind of lower the exposure, lower the highlights, and then that way we kind of see a little bit more of that sky and more color. And I think that's a pretty banging photo if you ask me. Okay, and then what I usually do is how I kind of speed up the editing process is I create a preset based off of this. And I'm gonna call this the Pixel because I shot this everything with my Pixel. Now we can just apply this setting to every single photo, just like that. There's a faster way to do this, but I'm just doing it like this because it's not that many photos. And then we can see much better the photos are after the edit. Alright, so this one I kind of liked initially, but now I kind of don't like it. It just looks like a bad photo, so I'm gonna get rid of it. Sometimes when I'm editing, I kind of just get rid of photos because they looked good initially and then afterwards they don't look that good. Oh, this is probably my favorite photo from this shoot. Just because I don't know why I've never thought about just opening the door and shooting through the door. And look at this bokeh from that door. That looks so good. Wow, that looks really good. You just need to do this. Sometimes you just gotta keep it simple. Just like that. And I think that's just good. To get this result with a smartphone that you always have with you is just absurd. This is my favorite photo. That's basically how I edit my photos. I think these came out to be pretty good. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I want to say that smartphones do a really good job at taking photos. I know Google Pixel is probably one of the better phones out there to take photos. I mean, some of these photos are so good that I'm sure if you even take them to professional photographers, they wouldn't even be able to decipher whether they are actually taken from a professional camera or on a smartphone. So hope you guys learned a little or two about my workflow and how I edit photos. Again, this is not the only way to edit photos. Everyone's got their own style. Everyone does things their own different way, but this is just how I do it. Until next time, remember, there's enough bad things in the world. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.
From far away she looks so good. Grew up in the same neighborhood, and that's how to rub salt in the wound. Spend a few hours on the reservoir. Never broke a bone, so I'm gonna try hard to prove you wrong. That I'm not who I used